From Savannah to Charleston, St. Augustine, and the Carolina coast, pirate history and pirate fever are easy to find.
Sure, there were pirates in Savannah.
St. Augustine's history was influenced by piracy.
Each artifact that is recovered from this site, they all have a story to tell.
I have found out there's more pirate history here than I can cover in a 6-hour tour.
Ironically, pirates are role models for Americans of all ages.
Fire the cannon! I'm taking her!
Every single one of us, at one time or another during our lives, all wanted to grow up to be pirates.
Every little boy, you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there'll be one in the crowd that'll say, I want to be a pirate.
But in real life, the picture wasn't always so rosy.
The attack itself is incredibly violent and ruthless.
Today they're folk heroes, but back then to the people living they were terrorists.
Join us now as we sail the 7 seas in search of true tales of pirates. Pirates still haunt the waters off St. Augustine, Florida, the oldest city in America, founded 4.5 centuries ago. Today, families are treated to a first-hand pirate encounter aboard the Black Raven, a real-life pirate ship that plies the harbor of the first city.
Fire the cannon! I'm taking her!
The Black Raven sails daily from the St. Augustine Municipal Marina. On board, a motley crew of characters enthralls passengers young and old.
Most of the kids that come on here, they love it. They want to be a pirate for a day. And that's really what we try to give them, allow them to become a pirate and a part of the Black Raven crew for a day. Kids really enjoy the sword fighting. They really enjoy the face painting. They enjoy, the whole battle thing.
On this particular cruise, the Black Raven is attacked by the nastiest of pirates, Blackbeard and Captain Hook, who come alongside in a smaller vessel and take the Black Raven's treasure chest.
Blackbeard was going around in circles around us, and then we kept on shooting bombs, and they kept on shooting bombs, and then they made a deal to give a bottle of rum for a treasure chest.
I thought it was awesome. We celebrated an 8th birthday for my son today, and he just really enjoyed the songs and the sword fighting and kind of negotiating over rum and treasure.
Just up the street from the Black Raven's lair, visitors to the first city will find the fabulous St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum. The museum boasts the largest assemblage of authentic pirate items ever displayed under one roof, including one of only 3 remaining real Jolly Roger pirate flags and the only authentic pirate treasure chest known to exist today. All are exhibited in realistic pirate realms that transport visitors back to the past.
When people walk into the museum, we want them to be completely immersed in the environment that we created. If you're in Port Royal, Jamaica, which is the first area that you enter, we want you to feel like you're literally on the streets of Port Royal, Jamaica. And then when you step into Rogue's Tavern, it's like being in a pirate's tavern. We have a touchscreen book of pirates that's also interactive. And it's literally like a book, and you just touch it, and it flips through. And it'll take you through different pirates from the Golden Age who were very notorious. You come in and you read and you learn, but you also touch and you see and you feel and you find. So it's more of like a journey than just walking through a museum.
In a city as old as St. Augustine, it's not surprising pirates have called here more than once over the centuries.
St. Augustine's history was influenced by piracy.
The first pirate attack on St. Augustine came just over 20 years after the city was founded. The perpetrator, Englishman Francis Drake, is not a figure we normally associate with piracy.
When we think of Francis Drake, we always think of him as Sir Francis Drake, but the Spanish considered Drake a pirate.
Drake came on the tail end of a rampage through Spain's colonial outposts. St. Augustine's turn came in May of 1586, and the destruction that ensued very nearly shut down the Spanish town forever.
Drake comes to town with an armada of about 2,000 men, packed aboard 23 ships.
And he just torched the town, burned the orchards.
He essentially lays waste to the town. And what he doesn't carry off, he destroys in some fashion.
It was a pivotal event for St. Augustine.
All the evidence of this important chapter in St. Augustine's history vanished for more than 4 centuries.
We have plenty of historical evidence for Drake's activities. However, we never really found any archaeological signature for that particular singular event.
In 1998, city archaeologist Carl Halbert made a startling discovery at the site where the St. Augustine Art Association was building a new wing.
As soon as we came down on top of the black soil and we started seeing pottery fragments in it, we knew we had something special.
And lo and behold, he made this unprecedented discovery of 16th century artifacts that he was able to date to Sir Francis Drake's 1586 raid on St. Augustine when he burned the town down.
The artifacts went into storage in Halbert's lab for 12 years until a new opportunity arose to bring them in front of the public.
And he laid them out on the kitchen table and said, "This is what we found underneath your gallery." And we said, "Wow, this is a treasure trove."
The resulting exhibit, which is free and open to the public, combines art and artifacts in an inventive way. The first thing that sets the exhibit apart is the spot where it stands.
The unique aspect of this exhibit is that it is in place right where the artifacts were found, and that's very rare. So when you stand facing this exhibit, you are standing on historical turf, so to speak. So 3 feet under the floor is where Carl discovered this find.
The exhibit includes a portrait of Drake drawn with charcoal from the flames of his raid, and a quilt depicting what the archaeologist found. Actual artifacts are sewn into the fabric, and visitors are invited to touch them and make a personal connection with the past.
We're very proud of this. We worked very hard. We had a very creative, collaborative team that put this together.
Is this the end of the story, or will more traces be found of this brutal episode in St. Augustine's history? Halbert says odds are Francis Drake will one day make another appearance in America's oldest city.
I think that, anytime you put a shovel to the ground, you have the possibility of finding something related to Drake's raid.
Reform your ranks and fight!
The next big pirate attack came at the hands of an English buccaneer named Robert Searles. His 1668 attack on the city is now reenacted in St. Augustine every March.
Robert Searles comes to St. Augustine almost by accident. He is sailing off the coast of Cuba in 1668, waiting for a silver ship, one of the big silver galleons, and he misses it somehow. It doesn't come and it doesn't come, and so finally his men are getting very restless. They want a payday. So Searles is looking for an easy target. And St. Augustine was well known to the English by this point, and it probably looked like a very easy target because it was a very small, poorly armed garrison town.
When Searles' men stormed ashore in the dead of night, the Spanish city was caught completely unaware.
The attack itself is incredibly violent and ruthless. There are stories about pirates shooting small children in the street. Over the course of the evening, the pirates sack the city. They take a grand total of 70 hostages.
Help us! Help us!
They steal all of the silver from the treasury. Not only do they steal the canvas in the warehouse, they go to all of the ships that are in the harbor in St. Augustine and steal all of their sails. This will become important later because it means the people of St. Augustine can't get the word out to ask for help because they're literally trapped in their city.
This humiliating disaster, coupled with the bitter memories of Francis Drake's raid 8 decades earlier, prompted the creation of one of St. Augustine's most famous landmarks.
The most concrete evidence of the Searles attack is the construction of the Castillo de San Marcos, which is the stone fort that still stands here in St. Augustine. There were several major attacks over the next century that the English launched against St. Augustine. And the fort was instrumental, vital in maintaining Spanish control of the province.
No city in America boasts more pirate history than Charleston, South Carolina.
A lot of people will talk about cities like, Key West, and even Savannah, and these being pirate towns, but honestly, they don't hold a candle to this town as far as what has happened here.
The most infamous pirate ever to call on this seafront city was the most famous pirate of all time, Blackbeard. In mid-1718, at the height of his pirate career, Blackbeard showed up off Charleston with a huge fleet of heavily armed ships carrying a pirate army.
And he comes with 4 ships, about 400 men. He's here for a better part of a week. He captures 8 ships going out to trade. They don't know he's there. And so the economy comes to a standstill, all to the actions of one man.
So they control the destiny of the city without actually having to fight anybody. In essence, the whole city was thrown into turmoil for part of a week.
Blackbeard made a fortune from the ships he captured during his stay in Charleston, as well as the valuables he stole from the passengers he took hostage. But surprisingly, the thing the pirate most desired, and for which he ransomed the city, was a chest of medicine for his crew, syringes and mercury to put in them.
We're getting into indelicate territory, but they have probably syphilis. It's the only means of treating syphilis at the time, and it's as simple as that. You're going to take these primitive catheters and they're going to be thrust into the urethra.
Pirates back in the day had an old saying, an evening with Venus could mean a lifetime with Mercury.
Medicine and stolen treasure in hand, Blackbeard departed and turned his pirate fleet north, heading to a rendezvous with destiny. But one of the pirate commanders who was with Blackbeard here would return to Charleston, and not of his own free will. Stede Bonnet, a wealthy planter from the British Caribbean, is known as the gentleman pirate. He paid for his own ship and put to sea in search of adventure, but he was an amateur pirate.
He knew nothing about how to navigate a ship or to be a pirate.
And Stede Bonnet was not much of a seaman. I mean, let's face it, the man didn't know what he was doing most of the time at the helm of a boat.
Bonnet was captured after a 5-hour battle in North Carolina's Cape Fear River and was brought back to Charleston as a prisoner. He was convicted for his crimes and put to death.
December 1718, Stede Bonnet's going to be taken, trundled on the back of a horse cart down to White Point, noose put around his neck, and he's going to take a step into eternity.
Of course, one of the worst possible things for a gentleman, he was not able to wear his wig at the time of execution because it would just sort of unceremoniously flop off if he'd been wearing it.
Today, a monument in White Point Garden marks the area where Bonnet and many other pirates met their end.
This depicts the area where we executed pirates. Now they would hang there gagging and choking to death, doing what they used to call dance the hip and jig, till they suffocated and died.
For these outlaws, there was no honor after death.
All these men were hanged. They just displayed their bodies for several days, hanging on the chains and in the gibbets, and then took them down at low tide and dragged them to the edge of the water and left them face down in the mud at low tide.
And of course, we can't fail to mention the most famous female pirate of all time, Anne Bonny, who was the hot-headed daughter of a Charleston rice planter. Anne ran away with a sailor and wound up running with the pirate known as Calico Jack Rackham. When the law caught up with Rackham and his crew, Anne and another female pirate named Mary Read showed what they were made of.
When they were captured, the crew were all so inebriated that Anne Bonny and Mary Read, the only 2 women on board, were also the only ones defending the ship from certain doom. 2 women, literally outmanned.
As Calico Jack is being led to the gallows, he stopped and spoke to Anne one last time. And he said, well, I guess this is it, it's over. And she said, well, I guess it is. But if you'd come on deck that night, stood and fought like a man, there should be no need of them now hanging you like a dog. And that was it.
Though Blackbeard, Stede Bonnet, and Anne Bonny are long gone, Charleston still has many connections to its pirate past. One of them is the Pink House at 17 Chalmers Street. Though there is some disagreement about the exact date when the house was built, it's widely believed to be the oldest home in Charleston. The building originally housed a tavern downstairs and probably a brothel upstairs, and it was a place where pirates or smugglers would come in search of a rowdy night.
Come to port, they're going to look for a place to spend whatever money that they've gathered during their voyages, and the Pink House was one of the most notorious taverns here. As a tavern, this is of course going to attract pirates who love more than anything to drink. Rum, cheap, was potent. Average strength of a tankard here in Charlestown would have been about 90 proof.
Historian and actor Eric Lavender guides Charleston visitors on pirate walking tours, revealing the city's long and fascinating pirate history. The old Exchange and Provost dungeon sits on the spot where pirates awaited their appointment with a hangman. Exhibits in the dungeon underneath bring the story to life. Nearby stands the powder magazine, erected just a few years before Blackbeard became the scourge of the city. And in St. Philip's Churchyard, in the shadow of what is perhaps Charleston's most famous steeple, lies the man who brought Stede Bonnet to justice.
That is the grave of Colonel William Rhett, the man who captured pirates.
The pirate tour takes 2 hours, but
I have found out there's more pirate history here than I can cover in a 6-hour tour.
But to really walk in a pirate's shoes, you might not have to walk at all. The schooner Pride is an old-fashioned sailing ship that allows you to see the city through a pirate's eyes.
I think the best way to see Charleston from a pirate's point of view is to get on the water, look and see the waterways that they would have seen, see what they considered the crown jewel of the British Empire, and see just that magnificent harbor and why it would attract ships carrying all that wealth.
After Blackbeard was finished with Charleston, he swung his fleet north and sailed towards the North Carolina coast. Here, he ran his flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, aground on a sandbar near the seaside village of Beaufort. Some say the act was intentional, a way of splitting up his crew to keep more of the booty for himself, but no one will ever know for sure. In November 1718, a bounty hunting team led by Lieutenant Robert Maynard ran Blackbeard to ground and killed him in a short but violent fight. Meanwhile, the flagship of the most infamous pirate of all time lay hidden beneath the waves less than 100 miles away for more than 270 years. Until a team of shipwreck hunters, led by a private company called Intersal, located the wreck in 1996, in shallow water just a mile offshore in Beaufort Inlet. Today, Beaufort is a quaint tourist village, beguiling modern-day Americans with a haunting cemetery where lie more than a few ancient mariners. The bucolic downtown is cloaked in a shroud of historic homes and churches, beckoning the curious to come inside. Situated on a waterfront evocative of days gone by, the entire scene transports visitors to North Carolina's famous maritime past. On Front Street, across from the docks, stands the North Carolina Maritime Museum, a treasure trove of several hundred artifacts retrieved from Blackbeard's Hall.
The exhibit is divided up into sections, where we go basically from the introduction of who Blackbeard was and trying to place him within the context of, what was going on back then. And then we get to the ship itself, what did she look like? Where did she come from? Where was she built? How was she built? And then we take a closer look at some of the artifacts that were more associated with the actual ship. You know, you get to the weaponry section of you know, the types of weapons that armed the ship. You know, everything from cannon and the ammunition that the cannon were firing, and then you get into the small arms that the pirates themselves would have utilized, like the blunderbuss barrel and, you know, the ammunition, small lead shot that those would have been utilizing, and then pewter plates. You know, how they were eating on board.
Among the artifacts relating to life aboard ship is an interesting item called a piss-dale, basically the ship's toilet. This may be where Blackbeard himself went to the bathroom.
You know, dale was essentially a trough, so it was a piss trough.
There are medical devices too, syringes and pharmaceutical containers, perhaps the very ones for which Blackbeard ransomed Charleston before he began his rendezvous with fate. But most interesting to David Moore is a detailed recreation of the wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge.
And so you can literally see, you know, at a much smaller scale, the little cannons and the ballast stones and barrel hoops and anchors and everything else lying on the bottom. So it gives people a better idea of what we divers see, albeit a much smaller scale, and how we operate on the bottom and work down there.
In all, more than 1 million artifacts have been recovered from the wreck of the Queen Anne's Revenge over the years since its discovery. These are cleaned and restored at a lab at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. The collection includes cannons and iron ammunition, which must remain submerged and subjected to an electric current to remove salt accumulated over 300 years in seawater.
The salt has impregnated into the metal, and if we left the salts there and allowed the gun to dry out, there would be a risk that the object would corrode after we'd finished treating it. Depends on the size of the gun. That can take like 3, 4, even 5 years to get all the salts out.
Curators often use an X-ray machine to see what's inside concretions of calcium carbonate, which have formed over many years and bonded iron artifacts together. There's a huge anchor, possibly one the pirate crew used to try and pull the Queen Anne's Revenge off the sandbar where it was stuck. Oceanic worms have devoured most of the ship's timber, but a few pieces remain, including the big sternpost which was located on the rear of the ship.
As you can see, once this ship's been buried in the sand for 300 years, it must have been exposed at periods. If we allowed it to dry out, those cells would collapse.
Also recovered were personal items belonging to the ship's crew, including metal tools and thousands of tiny glass beads.
And some of these are really, really small. For example, they might be like a couple of millimeters across. We kind of tend to keep them in these little gel capsules to keep all the pieces together.
All of these items, big and small, are clues to the nature of daily life on the ship and what happened the day it wrecked.
What I like to tell folks is that, you know, each artifact that is recovered from this site, no matter how dull or mundane to the common observer, you know, they all have a story to tell.
Ahoy there! Yes, you! Surrender a small treasure and gain great wisdom.
Step into any shop in downtown Savannah and you'll stumble over pirate paraphernalia almost everywhere you turn. And when tall ships pull into port, it only serves to make Savannah's pirate connections seem even more real.
It's really exciting to see the ships because Savannah has such a wonderful history with the pirates.
Savannah and swashbuckling pirates go hand in hand for thousands of people who visit here each year. Pirate fever spreads even wider during the annual Tybee Island Pirate Festival, when hundreds of people don their finest buccaneer attire and immerse themselves in everything pirate.
Give me an R!
The Pirate's House restaurant on East Broad Street is ground zero for pirate lore in Savannah.
Avast ye, me hearties!
Inside, visitors are met by real-life pirates.
There's a lot of goofing around, joke-telling. But you are putting the R in the margarita now, are you? A little bit of picking on people here and there, depending on the audience. Is it really? The children are usually pretty excited. They wear their little pirate hats.
The lovely dancing pirate of the seven seas.
The Pirate's House has been a staple of the Savannah scene for decades. Pioneering businessman Herb Traub opened the restaurant in the 1950s, utilizing two of Savannah's oldest structures.
He was sort of the P.T. Barnum of his day. He owned several restaurants and he knew how to promote.
In a time when downtown Savannah was not yet a tourist mecca, Herb Traub's Pirate House was one of the only attractions around.
Used to be long years ago, you could come in and order yourself a nice 1-pound T-bone steak for $3 a plate. Wash it all down with a nice cup of tea for 10 cents.
The multiple dining rooms exude pirate ambiance and mystery, and the most mysterious spot in the entire building is the rum cellar.
Well, the rum cellar is one of those places you enter and it's immediately a different feel. You know, the air thickens, the walls were all made of brick. It's kind of a deep, dank, kind of colder temperature as soon as you enter.
According to legend, the rum cellar contained the opening of a tunnel that led to the river, a passage to captivity for many an unfortunate sailor.
Sailors who were drinking in taverns were shanghaied and dragged through tunnels and then found themselves at sea aboard various ships, including pirate ships.
Sailor never refused a free drink, so down the hatch it goes. Well, that sailor would wake up the next day with a headache and a new job to do.
In reality, the cellar had a much less mysterious function. It was a place where tavern keepers stored barrels of rum, and the tunnel's primary use was probably as a convenient means of bringing the liquor up the steep bluff. But there's still the allure of the connection between the Pirate's House and Robert Louis Stevenson's novel Treasure Island. Savannah is part of the backstory in this quintessential pirate book.
Before the action in the novel begins, the captain of the pirate ship, the Walrus, dies in Savannah. He gives his treasure map to his first officer, Billy Bones, and that sets the whole novel into motion.
Herb Traub always maintained that the evil Captain Flint breathed his last in a room upstairs in the Pirate's House. But Stevenson writes only that Captain Flint died somewhere in Savannah, and doesn't specify where. Traub also said the captain's ghost haunts the restaurant. Obviously, this story isn't meant to be taken seriously, as fictional characters don't have ghosts. But no one is claiming the stories are actually based in fact.
I guess it's one of those things where people come here, they want to believe. So it really doesn't matter whether pirates ever frequented this place or not.
All of which begs the question, were there actually ever pirates in Savannah?
Sure, there were pirates in Savannah. There weren't a lot because Savannah was founded after the height of piracy in the Caribbean.
Savannah was founded in 1733, and the golden age of piracy ended no later than 1726. That means Blackbeard, Stede Bonnet, Anne Bonny, Calico Jack, and all of their compatriots were dead long before Savannah came into existence. So while Charleston and St. Augustine have extensive pirate history, Savannah does not.
If you're looking for piratical behavior, there's not going to be a lot of it in Savannah.
But that's not to say the city has no pirate story to tell. In fact, Treasure Island, with its Savannah connection, is credited in large part for giving birth to the modern pirate craze that's been raging since the early 20th century. Stevenson borrowed things from earlier authors and created the pirate prototype that's at the center of it all.
Robert Louis Stevenson took images of pirates from all these different sources and places and put them together in a way that made this absolutely iconic. I mean, we've got the parrot, we've got the peg leg. What is original is this idea of a treasure map with X marks the spot. That's the first time we see that. He just took pre-existing images and put them together in kind of a beautiful way, though, in a way that the cultural imagination could latch onto it.
No less influential were the images created by the original Treasure Island illustrator N.C. Wyeth and his mentor Howard Pyle, whose famous pirate drawings provide the basis for just about everything we associate with pirates today.
I think that once these pictures or these illustrations were in place, it did become the persona of pirates all over the world. He combined different clothing from different time periods, from the 1500s to the 1800s, and came up with what we think today as a pirate.
In Savannah, St. Augustine, Charleston, and the Carolina coast, pirates have shaped the history of our region. And thanks to books like Treasure Island and the illustrations they contain, pirates have shaped how we think of ourselves as well. From pirate tours to the pirate house, from shipwrecks to archaeological digs, from festivals to reenactments, and more. Maybe all of this proves that each of us, whether we know it or not, is a pirate at heart.